In this video, I'm going to go over this financial statement practice problem. And I do have a similar problem in another video on my channel, but I thought I would do another one just because I'm doing a new series with lecture videos, and this goes along with that. But I'll put a link in the description to my other video related to this so that you can watch both if you want additional practice. And please check the description to get a link to my website where you can find this blank worksheet along with the answer key. In this problem, Smith Consulting provides consulting services to business owners. The capital balance of the owner was $25,000 at the end of 2024. And then at the end of 2025, the business's accounting records show the following balances. And everything is in this chart except for the owner's ending capital, which has a question mark beside it because we're going to calculate it when we get down here to the statement of owner's equity. Okay, so what we're going to do is just follow the instructions. First, you would do an income statement. That's the first report because the result of this report goes on to the next report, the statement of owner's equity. So for the income statement, first you're going to put a heading, which would be the name of the company at the top. This is an income statement, and it's for the year ended December 31st, 2025, which it shows that right here. So we're looking at all the revenues, all the expenses for the year of 2025. The first thing you would put on here would be the service revenue. So I'm going to put a heading that says revenue because sometimes you have more than one revenue account to list. And then over on the right, I'm going to need to put the 103,000. And then the expenses are going to be listed from the largest to smallest expense. So basically just look up here and look for anything with the word expense beside it. We have utilities expense, rent expense, advertising expense, and salaries expense. So those four expenses are going to be in this list, and we're going to put them in the order of the largest amount to the smallest. So salaries expense would be first at 32,000. Because I'm going to subtotal and add up these expenses, I'm going to put these numbers on the left, and the total expenses would be over here on the right. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill these in. Okay, now that I have all of the expenses entered, I'm going to add these numbers up. If I add up these four numbers, I get $63,000. And I'm just going to put a line that says total expenses over here. And then now what I need to calculate is the net income or net loss. I would take the revenue minus the total expenses, and that would give me $40,000 if I do the math. So their net income, this is a profit because the revenue is a larger number than the expenses. So it's a positive number, it's a profit. If it had been reversed and the expenses were more than the revenue, then this would be a negative number and it would be a net loss. And that's all you have to do for the income statement. Now we're going to do the statement of owner's equity. I'm going to go ahead and put the heading in first, the name of the company. The report is the statement of owner's equity. And this is also for the year ended December 31st, 2025. And then for this report, I'm going to start with the beginning capital at the beginning of the year. And whatever you have at the end of the previous year, which was at the end of 2024, is what you would start with at the beginning of 2025. So I'm just going to put in here Capital, Smith Capital, December 31st, 2024. And that was $25,000. And then I'm going to add any owner investments. If the owner invested additional money into the business during the year, I'm going to want to put that on here. And the owner contributed $15,000 in 2025. And then what I'm going to want to do is put in the net income. Since it's an income, it's going to be added. If it had been a net loss, I would be subtracting. So I'm just putting in the $40,000 here. And that's it. And then what I'm going to want to do is add up what I have so far to get a subtotal. Now, you may or may not have to do this subtotal just depending on your class, on your teacher, on your homework, but I'm going to follow the format that I've used and go with it, but your format may be slightly different, and that's okay, as long as you get the final result. Okay, then I'm going to subtract any owner withdrawals for the year, or draws. The owner withdrew $21,000 this year. So I'm going to subtract that here with a negative. So I'm going to put it in parentheses, or you could just put a minus sign there. And then what I'm going to have left is the owner's capital at the end of the year. So if I take 80,000 minus 21,000, I get 59,000. And this is supposed to be a double underline under here, underneath this 59,000, but it's really hard to tell. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and prepare the balance sheet. So I would do the same heading, the name of the company. This is a balance sheet. And then for the date on the balance sheet, you would just have the date on the last day of the year. We're doing it as of December 31st, 2025. So you're looking at what they had at year end. Okay, so under assets, I'm going to look for anything that is an asset, and that would be the building, accounts receivable, furniture, cash, and vehicles. Those are all assets. Now for assets, you want to list them in the order of liquidity. So the most liquid asset, which would be cash, would be at the top, and the least liquid asset would be at the bottom. Liquidity is how quickly something can be converted to cash. So we're going to look at the building. That would take a lot longer to convert to cash versus furniture or accounts receivable. They could sell their receivables to a collection agency pretty quickly. So that's usually right under cash and checking accounts. And then something like vehicles, that's not going to take as long as a building to sell. So vehicles would be above buildings. So you might not have the perfect order, and that's okay, but you should have a general idea of what assets are more liquid versus what would be less liquid. So cash is going to go first, and that's 18,000. And then I would put accounts receivable right under that. Which was 3,000. And then either furniture or vehicles would probably go next. And then building would probably be at the bottom. And then what I'm going to want to do is add up these numbers, and I get $109,000 $8,000 when I add them up. Okay, so I'm going to just put over here on the left total assets. The balance sheet represents the accounting equation, so the total assets should equal the total liabilities and owner's equity. So this report is going to show that accounting equation. For liabilities, there are two liabilities. There's accounts payable and note payable. Accounts payable was $26,000 and note payable was $24,000. Total liabilities would be the total of those two numbers, which is $50,000. Okay, and then for owner's equity, all I'm doing is carrying this $59,000 from the statement of owner's equity into this report. And then what I would want to do at the bottom is show that liabilities plus equity is the same number as total assets. So I'm going to have a line here that says total liabilities and owner's equity. And then I would just be adding up the 50,000 and the 59,000 to get 109,000. And that's all you have to do. You're basically just taking this information from the chart and putting it into the appropriate statement or report, and then making sure by the time you get to the end that your accounting equation is in balance. If this is not in balance, then I would just go back and make sure you didn't put something in twice, or make sure you're adding and subtracting in the right places. And what you could do, if it's off by, say, $4,000, go back and look for something for $4,000. And maybe you missed putting in something that was $4,000. So those are the types of things I would look for if I had a mistake here. And that's all I wanted to cover. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and thank you for watching.